It was Baldwin who was pointing a pistol at Hutchins during a rehearsal when the gun went off, killing Hutchins. Baldwin has always claimed that the gun went off accidentally.
An FBI forensic report did find that the weapon could not have fired unless the trigger was pulled.
Still with us, we have attorney former Officer Huff. All right, Huff, talk to us about your opinion of these charges now dropped. Involuntary manslaughter, no longer charges being faced by Alec Baldwin.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that they really didn't have much of a choice in this case. In New Mexico, involuntary manslaughter is either an unlawful killing committed other than a felony. And then the third element, or not element, but the third format that it can be charged in is that that there was an unlawful killing with reckless disregard. But the defense to that is that that it was an accident, right? And that's what Mr. Baldwin has maintained the entire time. Not only was he not charged with the duty to safeguard the weapons, that was the gunnery's job, but then he has maintained the entire time that the gun went off accidentally. Without his mens rea in the actual actus reus, you don't have the necessary prima facie elements to prove up the case. Now, as to the other defendant, she's likely going to have a tougher time.
Yeah, she may have a tougher time, and that does become the issue here, Huff. The idea that they dropped it against Alec Baldwin, but not against the armorer. We do know, and if we remember, David Halls was the assistant director. He already pled guilty to unsafe handling of a firearm. He received 6 months probation, $500 fines, got to take a course. He did agree to testify in any case against Baldwin or Gutierrez. He was sort of the middleman. She was supposed to check the gun. She gave it to Halls. He was supposed to check the gun. And these are all based on regulations on set regarding how you're supposed to handle guns. It always felt to me like this is something that should be handled in civil court, which a lot of steps have been taken and in some cases already have been taken care of in civil court. Is this a case that you believe should be handled in criminal court, at least as far as Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer, is concerned?
No, Michael, I agree with you. This is most appropriate for civil litigation. You definitely have negligence, possibly even gross negligence. You have a causal chain between the two individuals who were charged with the duty of safeguarding the weapon. Obviously, given that the death resulted, that did not occur. But does it rise to the amount of some sort of criminal negligence? I just don't think that they have it.
Well, let me ask you about this, because I think people are going to say, wait a minute, there was a person responsible for prosecuting. He brought these charges. And then we know she went away. We had a new special prosecutor. So a new person comes in, looks at it and says, we are going to take away those charges against Alec Baldwin. And if you're a person not involved in the judicial system, I think you really ask the question, is it that easy? A new person and you get charges kicked? How does that work?
You know, that's a very tough but good question. It does depend from prosecutor to prosecutor, and it definitely can vary. I'm on a case right now where there was an offer to plead down from a felony to a misdemeanor, pretty heinous allegations, but after 2 to 3 separate prosecutors being reassigned, that offer is no longer on the table, and we're now looking back at a felony. So bringing that to the specific case, absolutely. I think that, you know, for the public at large, you look at this and say there's a lot of not necessarily horse trading, but dealing that goes on, or wheeling and dealing that does, and it's a necessary evil, unfortunately, in the criminal justice system. Just dealing with the sheer volume of numbers and courts being, you know, inundated with cases constantly, right? The courts are really overrun. So it does vary with each prosecutor, and they do have the discretion to make those decisions. And so it looks like Mr. Baldwin was on the fortunate side of that.
Yeah, and one could look at this from the outside looking in and say maybe there was favorable treatment to a star, but I think he was differently situated than the armorer. So there's an argument to be made. But I will say this, Mike, or Huff, excuse me. When you look at the way Baldwin's attorneys systematically dismantled this prosecution. They didn't go after the charges first, they went after the prosecutors. They got the prosecutors removed. Once they got them removed, then they got a special prosecutor who took care of the charges. I think it was a textbook case of some really, really outstanding lawyering on the behalf of Baldwin's lawyers.
I absolutely agree with you now. You know, there's a fine line between strategy, zealous advocacy, and gamesmanship, right? I think here, even if they had gotten to the merits of the prima facie case, ultimately, the prosecutor's office was not going to be able to overcome the defense. He maintained that it was an accident. There was no other real concrete evidence to the contrary. But moving the prosecutors around to a point where there's a special prosecutor and a fresh look at the case after there's been somewhat of a cooling of the minds, right? When the iron's hot and cooler minds cannot prevail, everyone's looking for someone to hang the charges on, right? And there sometimes is a rush to seek what folks hope will be justice, but having someone else come in and having a special prosecutor take a fresh look at the case and also weigh out the likelihood of being able to have a successful prosecution, whether by way of a full conviction or a deal, you have a situation where I think they realized that it wasn't, you know, they didn't want to throw good money after bad.
Yeah, fair enough. And money was an issue as well.
Absolutely.
As far as getting funding for this thing. So all that was great. Great stuff, Huff. I truly appreciate that. The other thing I do want to point out, Judge, is that in the statement they said we're looking forward to a proper investigation.
I saw that too.
Yeah,
very
that was
well
their
worded.
way of saying we didn't think they did a good job on this one. So we'll
but
continue
adding
to
in
watch
there,
it.
we'll cooperate with that investigation, and we're all for that. But those charges were premature.
Yeah, premature and wrong. Proper investigation. They think it was improper.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take a break, folks. Coming up, a woman gunned down after turning into the wrong driveway. We're going to take a look at a rash of senseless shootings unfolding all over the country. That's next here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, another dramatic day of testimony in the Doomsday Cult Mom murder trial. We'll break down the biggest moments with Skye Borgman, the director of the Netflix docuseries Sins of Our Mother. We'll get her thoughts on how this trial's playing out and what to expect when the defense begins their case. Court TV teams are live from Boise, Idaho with all the latest.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala here with Judge Ashley Wilcott. We want to focus now on what seems to be a recent rash of gun violence where the gunman appeared to be shooting first and then asking questions later, if at all. At least 4 incidents have happened within the last week across the country.
And these incidents have not been related to one another. These cases involve some of the youngest victims among us. Shootings that include a 16-year-old boy who knocked on the wrong door in Missouri and a young lady in upstate New York who was met with gunfire in a driveway. Texas cheerleader left in critical condition, and believe it or not, a 6-year-old in North Carolina was shot over going to another yard to get her runaway basketball.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
horrible.
It's hard to even fathom. Now, we begin in Kansas City with the shooting that initially sparked nationwide outrage in recent days. 16-year-old Ralph Yarl. He was shot twice last week, once in the head, and he miraculously survived. Now, police say he went to the wrong house when he went to pick up his younger twin brothers. That's when he was met with gunfire at the hands of 84-year-old Andrew Lester. Lester pleaded not guilty to 2 felony charges, including assault in the first degree and criminal armed action. He is due back in court on June 1st.
And let's also bring in the Texas case where 2 cheerleaders were shot after one tried to get into the wrong car after a late night practice. It happened in a supermarket parking lot on Tuesday just after midnight. Peyton Washington was critically injured, hit in the leg and back. Thankfully, she's now recovering from surgery. The teenage girls apparently opened a door to a car and noticed a strange man in the passenger seat. The cheerleaders then retreated into the right car, at which point the suspect allegedly began shooting. The cheer squad's owner says Peyton is the star of the team, but the girls will try to go on without her.
The girls are all completely traumatized. Physically, the rest of them are doing well, except for Peyton. This competition this weekend is the end of their all-star career. It's the biggest competition of the season, and for them, it's the last time for them to compete. So there's almost nothing that would keep them from competing this weekend. It's going to be a much tougher road now without Peyton. We're going to do the best we can, and I don't think there's much that would keep those girls from being there this weekend.
25-year-old Pedro Rodriguez has been arrested. He does face up to 10 years in prison if convicted. The incident was caught on surveillance video, but it has not yet been released. We want to bring back in Michael Huff. Huff, all right, tell us about, first of all, you know, the similarities to me in these two cases are, number one, guns, and number two, the fact that both of the defendants have been arrested, are facing charges, when innocent people have met really tragic consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Michael really touched on it poignantly. Folks are out shooting and asking questions later, if at all. I think that it's time now that we really have to look at what the standards are for either having a concealed handgun license, or in the states where you're allowed for open carry. There has to be a higher degree and standard for lethal action, and we're just not seeing that right now. And these are the consequences of it, and it's truly tragic.
Huff, let me ask you this. When you look at these two particular cases, you have one person, an older man, 84 years old, in his house. It's towards the evening, about 10 o'clock at night. The other, you have a young man in his car. They're both, obviously, I don't know what the claim is going to be by Mr. Rodriguez, but Mr. Lester is claiming that self-defense, and he was claiming he feared for his life. He's 84 years old, and he was in his home. Do you see a difference between the two defendants in this case? Is one better situated to defend the charges under the circumstances?
I think the elderly gentleman is a more sympathetic defendant, if you will. He was in his home. He was armed with a weapon, likely because he was afraid of intruders. Then at night, around 10 p.m., he hears an unexpected noise at the door, and then he reacts. Granted, you know, in hindsight, which is often 20/20, we can look at this and believe that that was a rash response. But if you're similarly situated, elderly, and if someone does get in your home and you're elderly and you haven't stopped them, you're likely to be injured and or killed yourself. So I think that you're going to see quite a strong defense, despite the tragic nature of this incident. I do think that he's got a strong self-defense claim.
I'm sorry, Michael, I was about to step on your toes and interrupt, because I said to you, I don't think but I want to say one other thing about this that really disturbed me about the car. He did not shoot the girl when she was entering his car. He shot the girl after she retreated and was getting into the other car. Yes. What does that do to it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's something that separates the two as well. Huff, let me ask you this quick question before we move on to more of these unfortunate stories. Does the Castle Doctrine, self-defense, apply in a car as well as someone's home?
I would say no, and I definitely agree with Judge here. The key issue is the fact that you're shooting at a retreating person. There was no, at least that we know of right now, no indication of an immediate threat. You're in a public location. You're not in your home. And so your expectation of privacy is somewhat different, as in this situation where it was just an innocent mistake of believing that you were getting into your own vehicle. And when I saw this story, I thought about the fact that just a week ago, I did the very same thing. And to think that you can be shot for mistaking one vehicle for another is beyond alarming. But no stand your ground or Castle Doctrine in a public parking lot in your vehicle, particularly when it's a fleeing female that you shoot.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there is also this specter of possible racial undertones in the Ralph Yarl case. But we'll get to more on that later. I want to move on now to North Carolina. A manhunt is underway after a 6-year-old girl was shot. Allegedly, a 6-year-old girl when a basketball rolled into a neighbor's yard. Authorities are looking for 24-year-old Robert Louis Singletary. He's accused of shooting the girl who was reportedly shot in the cheek. She is expected to be okay. That's the other good thing about all these cases. Most people are going to be okay. The girl's parents were also reportedly shot. The father is said to be in serious condition.
In upstate New York, the woman was shot to death after the car she was in turned into the wrong driveway. These are all so senseless, Michael. They're just doing normal activities any one of us does any given day. 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis was with friends over the weekend when they did turn into the wrong address in the rural town of Hebron. Her family, as you can imagine, is devastated.
Kaylin's two younger sisters, Lily and Maddie, are gonna have to grow up without their older sister. My wife, Angel, is gonna have to go through the rest of her life without her baby girl.
As the car was trying to turn around, the homeowner, 65-year-old Kevin Monahan, came out and fired 2 shots. Monahan's attorney says his client is remorseful.
Yeah, still with us, attorney Michael Huff. And Huff, the only thing that I can think of when you think about these types of cases is folks today, for some reason, and things are not great in our country right now, but folks are living in fear. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Right. I mean, these are quite irrational responses. I don't have enough information to give a full analysis on this set of facts. But if you look at someone to come out in their driveway, was he being aggressed in any way? Were there some sort of furtive movements? Did it appear that someone was reaching for a weapon? Was there any indication whatsoever that his safety was in jeopardy such that lethal force was justified? And to just juxtapose him against the other defendant who's 83 or 84 years old, this is a 65-year-old individual, and without the people being at his doorstep and some sort of immediate threat of injury or threat to life, I don't see this particular defendant being as sympathetic as the former.
And, you know, in all of these cases, again, it's something that any one of us could be doing. But honestly, I've got to go back to the one you talked about, Michael, the 6-year-old going after a basketball, and that neighbor shoots at her family, multiple injuries, and the fact that he's on the run now. And so these are really, I like your word, irrational, it's unreasonable. And I think what I'm hoping for, Huff, is some kind of words of let's educate the public about these things happening. But what's the next step? What can we do in terms of not seeing such irrational, horrific acts being committed on innocent people living their normal lives?
You know, I've been giving this a lot of thought lately. I think we have to be tough on crime, but smart on life. The problem is that we're not getting to the heart of the issues that really create this sort of systemic illnesses, right? Whether it's irrational behavior, the constant undertones of fear that we're living in throughout our country and society today, a lack of education, and just being informed, right? Folks are able to obtain weapons right now without proper training. My hunch and suspicion is that we're going to find out that with the case of the 6-year-old girl, that this is either a mental health issue or there was some sort of negative interactions between the neighbors initially, and that this wasn't the first run-in. But we'll have to wait to see about that. But in terms of trying to rectify the situation, I think that we need to raise our social consciousness and awareness and really get down to the business of humaning better. We've got to do better.
Yeah, I agree. And I also agree about that 6-year-old shooting. I was going to say the same thing. I bet you there was something else sort of underlying that, or again, a mental health issue. The guy was only 24 years old. He wasn't fearing a 6-year-old.
Right.
You know, something else was going on there for sure. Huff, really appreciate great insights there, folks. Later, we're going to have a very special guest joining us to talk about one of these senseless shootings. Next hour, Ralph Yarl's attorney, Lee Merritt, will join us, and he's going to discuss with us that case and how Yarl is recovering. Surprisingly, he's doing very well, so that's good news. That's right here on Court TV Live, coming up ahead in our next stop.
And coming up next, we're going to go back to Colorado. Letitia Stout, everybody's been talking about this case. Stay with us. We're going to visit that case and all the latest. Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Two friends found dead and a husband on trial for their murder. Will his unique defense be enough to sway the jury?
I didn't see anything like this.
Someone They Knew with Tamron Hall. Tonight, 7/6 Central on Court TV.
It's a love triangle that turned tragic.
Now, one man is dead, one is facing a jury, and the woman in the middle is planning to take the stand.
The roommate romance murder trial. Live coverage begins Monday morning, only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Turning to Colorado, where court is dark today in the Letitia Stout trial. Testimony resumes tomorrow at 11 Eastern Time.
The prosecution is expected to play one more phone call between Letitia and Al Stout. And quite frankly, I think, Judge, that's all I could take is one more phone call. In one call we did hear, Letitia tells Al Gannon tells Al that Gannon is not in Colorado.
Letitia was in Colorado with nothing, and you guys have ran up all these places where y'all think I've been or whatever, and you haven't found Gannon.
So if you had a guess, where would he be at? Like if you said you guessed he's not in Colorado, I don't disagree with that because they've looked and searched for 3 weeks and not found a damn thing other than some random pictures of some okay? They haven't found Gannon. So if you had to guess where he's at, where do you think he's at?
Probably somewhere, scary as it sounds, probably not even in the United States.
Now, tomorrow, the jury may hear or see the police interview with Letitia after her arrest in the 11-year-old's death. Now, we don't know yet if that interview was actually videotaped.
And Michael, remember, shortly after her arrest is when Stout attacked a deputy with an energy drink after slipping out of her handcuffs, and that was caught on dash cam.
She keeps threatening me. Stop. She keeps threatening me.
Stop.
She keeps on threatening me. I have stopped it. She keeps on. She got out of the streets. She keeps on. Threatening me. I will for you. She keeps
Put your arm down.
Put your arm down. She keeps threatening me the whole time.
Tisha, give me your arm.
I will to you.
Tisha, give me your arm.
I will to you, but not
Cooperate with me.
Now.
Cooperate with me.
I will with you, but not with her.
Cooperate with me.
I will with you, not with her.
Tisha?
I will with you. I said I would with you. No. I said I would with you.
All right, we still have Attorney Huff with us, but before we bring him in, I have to say this, because some of the viewers have commented that you and I together when we're on air, sometimes they see us smiling and laughing, and I just feel compelled to say, especially during this particular trial, that I like you as a colleague, I like you as a friend, I like you with commentary, but the reality is these trials are heavy.
Yes.
And so when we laugh or we may say, oh, I don't know if we can listen to more, it's not at all, because we are making light of anything that has happened in this horrific case, but rather because sometimes you have to have a little levity to really hear how many horrible things are happening in this poor 11-year-old stepson in this
case. And at the end of the day, folks, we're real people.
Yeah.
And we're not going to make everyone happy every moment that we're on the air. We do our best to bring you information, but we're real people. And sometimes we'll smile because we just feel the need to. We're in this stuff all day, every day, and we gladly do it. So apologize if we get to that point.
And the reason I brought it up, because I want to go back to those videos. So Attorney Huff, these videos that they're listening to, I mean, honestly, to me, it's exhausting. And hearing her voice and lie after lie after lie after lie, does it convince this jury, do you think, that she was sane and she purposely murdered this young man?
Just to dovetail quickly off of your comment about sort of lightening the mood or needing to, smile a little bit. It definitely in law enforcement and criminal justice for you judges, Sometimes a little bit of humor or lightening the air is the only way to make it through such dense subject matter. And so I definitely share in that as well. That's how I made it through 26 years in criminal justice. Now, as to her comments and her demeanor and tone on those recordings, and again in the attack in the police vehicle, I don't know how she could dig a deeper hole. None of her conduct is consistent with a rational person. I think that all of her commentary certainly sounds like she knows more than she's telling. She doesn't seem to be particularly remorseful about anything that's gone on. There's a complete lack of concern on any level for the 11-year-old child, and I think they're gonna have a heck of a time digging her out of this.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, Judge, too, as well, is that when we hear her, I went back and I said, because I was asking the question to a lot of our guests, if they thought this could help the defense in any way. And in opening statements, the defense makes clear that this is part of the evidence they think supports their theory that there was some sort of mental break. So they do think these phone calls not only may help the prosecution, but it helps the defense as well.
Right, and I'm not convinced that it does. I'm not sure that I agree. In the last 10 seconds or so, Michael, do you think that the defense can use it to their favor?
I think I'm with you on this one, Judge. I just don't think that they're going to be able to spin this one. I think also, as I like to sort of tell the future sometimes, I think you're going to see her engage in other behavior that's just going to thicken the plot and dig her further into the trenches. They're not going to dig her out of this one.
You may be right. All right, we're almost at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Michael Huff, for joining us this hour with your expertise.
All right, folks, coming up, the latest on our breaking news. If you remember, prosecutors plan to drop the charges against actor Alec Baldwin after a deadly movie set shooting. We're going to have all the information and background on that when we come back, so keep it here on your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala.
And I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. A 16-year-old is shot after ringing the doorbell at the wrong house while looking for his brothers. His attorney will join us live. Lee Merritt has called this case racially motivated.
Plus,